Stewie's first word is the premiere of the 19th season of Family Guy. It's an episode that, on paper, sounds like a cute little character moment, but in practice raises way more questions than it has any business doing. Now, before I really dig in, I need to put something on the table up front. I have never been a fan of the ambiguity around who can and can't understand Stewie. That ambiguity has been played with in the show before, but most episodes at least let it live comfortably in the background. This one, though, it doesn't just acknowledge the ambiguity, it weaponizes it. And in doing so, it almost feels like it recklessly retcons Stewie's entire relationship with not just the cast, but the show in general. The premise is simple enough. Stewie says his first word, which of course is a swear, during church. Lois spirals into a full-blown existential parenting crisis over it, questioning everything from her competence as a mother to the moral trajectory of her child. Meanwhile, the rest of the family reacts strangely. And that strangely is where things start to fall apart. Because the episode heavily implies, more than usual, that Brian might be the only character who truly understands Stewie. And that's where I start calling bullshit. If Brian being a talking dog is totally normal within this universe, then why is a hyper-intellectual baby somehow crossing the line? This is a show where chickens fight men for 10 minutes at a time, for fuck's sake. A dog writes novels, has sex with human women, and gives political opinions. But this is where realism taps out? That disconnect has always been weird, but this episode puts a spotlight on it so harsh that it's impossible to ignore. The most baffling moment comes when Chris says, completely sincerely, Stewie said his first word. What the fuck is that about? Chris talks to Stewie all the goddamn time. He responds to him. He reacts to him. He even plays off his sarcasm and insults in other episodes. But suddenly we're meant to believe that Stewie hasn't spoken a single comprehensible word until now? That line alone feels like the writing team is gaslighting the audience. Because if Chris doesn't understand Stewie, then what exactly has been happening in every other episode where they interact? Are we supposed to assume Chris is just nodding along to baby noises with perfect comedic timing? Or that Stewie's been imagining every conversation he's had with everyone who isn't Brian? The episode doesn't clarify, and worse, it doesn't seem to care. And that's really the core issue here. Stewie's first word isn't interested in exploring Stewie as a character, it's interested in using him as a plot device for Lois's breakdown. In fact, despite that title, this episode is barely about Stewie's first word at all. It's about Lois having a crisis over her parenting skills. Stewie's development just happens to be the catalyst, which wouldn't be a problem if the episode didn't fundamentally mess with how Stewie is portrayed in the process. Because holy fucking shit, Stewie is unbearably innocent here. This is the same character who has attempted matricide, built time machines, ruled countries, and committed war crimes for jokes. But in this episode, he's suddenly this wide-eyed, morally blank infant who just absorbs whatever language happens to float into his brain. It feels wrong. Not wrong in a he's out of character for comedy way. Wrong in a this doesn't align with the internal logic of the show way. And that's a shame because honestly, the humor itself is pretty solid. There are some genuinely funny moments sprinkled throughout. The callback to Peter falling down the stairs is great. The timing is sharp, the delivery lands, and for a moment, the episode remembers how to just be funny without interrogating its own mythology. Which makes it even more frustrating that the episode does overthink itself everywhere else. Because here's the thing, this episode would have worked so much better if it had just been about Stewie swearing in church. That's it, there's your conflict right there. Stewie drops an F-bomb in a quiet, judgmental church setting. Lois panics. Hijinks ensue. You get social commentary, character humor, and none of the existential baggage. Instead, the episode decides to make Stewie's speech some kind of landmark event. And in doing so, it accidentally makes you question every single interaction Stewie has ever had with the family. And once that question is in your brain, you can't get it out. Why does Lois sometimes respond to him intelligently, but sometimes act like he's babbling? Why does Peter occasionally react to Stewie's insults, but otherwise ignore his genius? Why is Brian treated as a linguistic equal, but everyone else gets selectively deaf? The episode doesn't answer any of this. It just opens the door and walks away. By the end, Lois resolves her crisis, Stewie goes back to being Stewie, and the status quo resets. But the damage is done. The episode doesn't feel like a sweet character moment, it feels like a continuity grenade that went off for no real reason. Had they made this during the first 3 seasons, I wouldn't have such a problem. But they decided to do it for their 19th season. And you really can't just go topsy-turvy this deep into your show's run. Some windows of opportunity close very fast, and this is one of them. Stewie's first word isn't terrible. It's funny in places, competently written, and emotionally earnest in what it's trying to do. But it asks a question that Family Guy should never ask so directly. Who actually understands Stewie and why? And once you ask that, the joke stops being funny. Because ambiguity can be charming, but inconsistency, that just makes the universe feel slappy. And for an episode that barely even focuses on the milestone it's named after, that's a pretty big fuck up. I'm rating it a 4 out of 10.